2021. So for those of you that are still not familiar with us, my name is Tzachi Reich. I'm the head of the economic mission here in São Paulo. And our goal is basically to connect between Brazilian and Israeli entities, to promote trade between the countries, to attract investments, and to solve different trade barriers that exporters face when dealing between the countries. We do this by different activities that we do, whether through delegations, virtual delegations, physical delegation, and actually this year we are planning a physical delegation together with Anjos, and hopefully this will happen later this year. As well as different events that we participate, sometimes with an Israeli pavilion. So we are here to help you connect between the ecosystems and solve barriers. With that, I will also thank Brenda, and unfortunately Maria Chita isn't here today, but we have a wonderful relationship and collaboration, and looking forward for doing amazing things together. And with that, I will invite Ellen Weisleder from our crowd, which is honestly one of the most interesting and different venture capital that we have in Israel. And I'll let Alan introduce himself and speak a bit more about our crowd and the ecosystem. Alan, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Tzachi, and thank you, Brenda, and thank you all for being with us today. It's a true pleasure to be here with you. I'll tell you a tiny bit about myself, and then we'll go into a bit more about the Israeli tech ecosystem, our crowd, what we do, and some interesting companies that we're looking at right now, which I hope you'll find interesting. So I'm originally from Costa Rica. I don't speak Portuguese, I do speak Spanish. I grew up in Costa Rica, but I've spent all of my adult life in Israel, most of my adult life in Israel. I also spent 5 years in California, in Silicon Valley. I'm an engineer by education from the Technion, which I'm sure Tzachi knows, many of you may know. It's the Israel Institute of Technology. I'm a software engineer. I worked for 7 years in the world of corporate IT, and then launched a entrepreneurial career. John Medved, the founder and CEO of our crowd, was one of my seed investors when I started as an entrepreneur in 1997. In 1998, I moved to California, and David Cowan from Bessemer. Bessemer is one of the leading venture capital firms in the US, invested in my firm, New Channel. I grew the company, sold it in 2002 to a publicly traded company, and after a year of handing over operations, I returned with my wife and family to Israel, and I've spent the last 15 years, I guess, the 15 years until I joined our crowd, I spent at 5 different startups, and I've been 5 years at our crowd as a partner and the head of investor relations. And really, we have a vision of providing flexible and professional access to venture capital investing to people from around the world. And with your permission, I will share my screen and tell you a little bit more. Let's see that you see my deck. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So really what we're trying to do, John's vision, John Medved's vision, was really to provide professional and flexible access to people from around the world, angels, family offices, and institutional investors from around the world to the venture capital asset class. We started in Israel, and if you go back 10 years when our crowd started in 2012, 90% of our investments were in Israel. Fast forward to 10 years, today about 50% are in Israel, about 40% in the US, and about 10% rest of the world. But let's talk, a tiny bit about the Israeli tech ecosystem, which I'm sure you've heard from many great speakers before. there's huge growth in Israel in tech. This, what we have on screen, is the amount raised by Israeli tech companies on a yearly basis. And as you can see, the hockey stick is truly taking off. In 2020, it was $10 billion. Last year, it was over $25 billion. We have 79 unicorns. We're incredibly proud. It's a completely disproportionate number of unicorns relative to the size of our country. And as you may know, the World Economic Forum ranks Israel, number one or number two in most of the categories having to do with tech innovation. The number of exits continue to grow every year. We had 145 exits totaling almost $10 billion in 2020, and it went up to 238 exits totaling over $22 billion in 2021. Let me tell you a little bit about our crowd and what we're doing. We are, as I mentioned, a firm that's been in business for 10 years. And in a sense, we are disrupting the venture capital world. The way, it used to be like a very close, neat, difficult to access world. We're basically opening it up. We've raised to date about $1.8 billion that we've raised and invested in companies. We've looked at over 16,000 companies. We've invested in over 300 of them, including also 35 funds and 5 incubators. To date, we've had 56 exits, and we have over 180,000 investors on our platform from around the world, including Brazil. We have offices in all 5 continents, and we have a representation in Brazil as well. We're incredibly happy to really have a representatives from almost every single country in the world. We've gone through a wave of hyper growth over the last 2 years. Specifically last year, the number of investors in our platform grew 300%, and the amount of money raised in our platform grew 100%. So we did roughly $256 million in 2020, and we did over $520 million in 2021. PitchBook ranks VCs around the world. They've ranked us, for the 3rd year in a row as Israel's most active venture capital firm. What this means is that we're probably the VC with the most access to venture capital, and the fact that we're allowing our registered investors to basically invest with us in our deals means that we're making the world of venture capital in Israel accessible to anyone and everyone. Of course, when I say everyone and anyone, I'm talking about accredited investors only. This is not a crowdfunding platform where anyone can put $100. This is a platform for accredited investors only, and the rules for accreditation vary from country to country. But if you're an accredited investor, you can basically register and invest with us. To give you a sense for our growth, in 2020, we invested in 38 new companies. And then in 2021, we invested in 62 new companies. We co-invest alongside the world leading funds and angel investors. It is often seen on our platform that we're co-investing with Kleiner Perkins or with USVP or Sequoia or Menlo Ventures or Accel Partners. We've recently invested with Bill Gates. We've invested several times with Eric Schmidt, with Jeff Bezos, with Li Ka-shing, with Mark Benioff, One of the key assets that we have as a firm is our portfolio, is incredibly large. And what this means is that when one of these companies comes, reaches a breakout event and is raising money, we have preemptive rights that allow us to secure an allocation. This is important because, I mentioned earlier that we invest alongside the world leading funds. Well, when a company is having a breakout event and is attracting one of the world leading funds, these funds will rarely leave any allocation for new investors. The only people that can invest in rounds that are, led by Khosla or Menlo or Sequoia are the existing investors. And by having this broader portfolio, it means that when we have a winner, we are allowed and we're enabling our registered investors to co-invest with us alongside the world leading investors. We've had 56 exits to date, realized exits in the different sectors that we operate, which include healthcare, mobility and transportation, cybersecurity, fintech, enterprise software, consumer software, and others. Our portfolio continues to grow not only in the number of companies, but the size, the valuation of these companies. And in 2021, the number of companies with a valuation above 100 million topped 125 companies. In terms of the breakdown of our portfolio, I mentioned earlier that in 2012 and 2013, when we just got started, it was primarily Israeli focused, whereas more recently, it's trending towards 50%, 50 to 60% Israel, with the balance primarily being US, but around 7 or 8% being Europe and Asia. In terms of stages, we are investing across stages. About a third of our investments are in early stage, about a third in growth, and about a third are late stage pre-IPO deals. The way our model works is that we look at around 200 companies every month. We will approve at our investment committee about 2% of these, and then we'll negotiate terms. We'll invest our own capital from our balance sheet in every single deal that is approved by our investment committee, and then we'll offer it up on our platform to investors that want to invest in these deals with us. We allow investors to select their own startup investments, that is, choose individual companies, basically review the summary of our due diligence, the deal terms, and make a selection, make a choice whether they want to invest or not in a company. Or for those that want to invest in venture capital but do not want to be picking companies, we also offer funds. And these funds are either our crowd funds with a strategy that we've defined, or third-party funds with third-party managers. By the way, by investing in third-party funds of the likes of Proof or Upfront or USVP or Ox, we gain access to their deal flow in the US and Europe. And this is really the way that we've expanded our deal flow abroad beyond Israel. In Israel, we have our own investment team. In the US, in Europe, and in Asia, we rely on our partners' deal flow team. For some reason, the slide is not moving. Okay, we have quite a few distribution partners as well. So I run a team of 80 people that spend their day either speaking with new investors or our existing investor base and presenting the opportunities. But we also rely on distribution partners, banks, financial institutions from around the world that are basically offering our funds and select deals to their client base. In the US, we have about a dozen distribution partners, the largest of which is Stifel, which has 2,500 financial advisors and manages over $300 billion of client money, and they're distributing our products. Stifel also became an investor in our crowd, the company. In Australia, we have National Australia Bank, also distributing. In Singapore, we have UOB, which has also become an investor in our crowd, the company. In India, Reliance. In Chile, we have La Vial, and AMM Capital. We work with BTG and M8 in Brazil and several others. I thought I would spend a few minutes reviewing, 3 companies in which we're currently investing. I chose 3 Israeli companies that I'm personally very fond of, and I wanted to share with you. I would like to pause just to see if there are any questions. And I see I have a few questions in the chat, so maybe I'll pause here and start replying to those questions. And in parallel, if you want to submit more questions to the chat, I'll be reviewing those. But one of the first question I got here is, why are you investing so little in Brazil? It's a great question, and I think it's not only Brazil, it's all of Latin America. We are, I believe 2022 is probably going to be the first year in which we will be investing in Latin America. In order for us to invest outside of Israel, we do so only with a very, very strong local partner that we can rely on their due diligence and understanding of, the local market dynamics. And we are in search for those partners in Latin America. We have a short list right now, and we'll be delighted if you have suggestions of people or funds that we should consider. We'll be delighted to consider them. But once we solidify those relationships, you will start seeing us invest in Latin America as well. There are definitely interesting opportunities in the Latin American continent, and Brazil, is probably the most interesting from all countries in the region. I have a question here that usually VC portfolios are not so large. In order to keep the partners focused on few startups, how do you prevent spreading too thin? Another excellent question, and we get it quite frequently. First of all, our investment team is probably a lot larger than any investment team that you've seen. We have over 50 people in our investment team to date. So that gives us a lot of, a very broad, that gives us a lot of capacity. I would add to that, as I mentioned, that investment team is dealing, primarily 90% of what they're doing is dealing with the deal flow, with the 60% of the deal flow that comes from Israel. The 40% is we are relying on our partners' investment team. So and that gives us, more capacity and more expertise in other geographies. By the way, there's another angle here, I think, to your question, which is, what happens. This is the question from Charles Kirschenbaum. Charles, there's another angle here, which is post-investment. Okay, so we've done the due diligence. I've explained how we do it. Now we've invested. How do we pay attention to so many companies, and how do we help them grow? There are 3 legs to that, to the answer. One is that we have a portfolio management team that is probably larger than most VCs. The second is we have a dedicated business development team. This is 6 people in our team that all they do is leverage our network of investors from around the world for the benefit of our portfolio companies. And that leads me to the third point, which is, we tap into our investors. We tap into the expertise of our investors. We often select board members to represent us in these companies that have invested in the company, and they may be, in Brazil or in Chile or in the US or in Australia, but they have expertise in the sector that the startup is active on. And we tap to our network not only for introductions, but also for members of the board that can help these companies. I'm looking at the next question. It says, it comes from Fontana Juarez. I'm looking for investors for a capital venture prospect. Can I send a prospect to our crowd? I believe you're saying you have a a company that you'd like to submit to us? Yes. So there is a apply.ourcrowd.com, and all startups can apply through that, and our investment team will be looking at it. Let's see other questions. Okay, so I got a question here, not in the public chat, but directed to me, saying, you know, what do you look in a partner when looking for a partner in Latin America? I think we will look for partners that have a very good track record of investment in the region, that have, you know, invested in dozens of companies, hundreds of millions of dollars, in a true, you know, impressive record in terms of returns. We will want to bring to bear our network, our expertise, and our dollars alongside a partner that has you know, a very solid and extensive track record. Next question says, I developed a natural neuroprotective bioproduct derived from Amazon rainforest that protects the brain. Okay, well, this is almost a full pitch. We won't address this here in detail. Please do go to apply.ourcrowd.com and submit your startup. We'll be happy to look at it. Question regarding what is our vision about investment in legal tech sector in Brazil. We're pretty sector agnostic. Again, for us to invest in Brazil, if we will do so alongside a respected local fund, we'll be delighted to look at legal tech. We haven't done a lot in legal tech, but we should probably do. We probably should do. There's definitely lots of interesting opportunities in that space. Next question from Eduardo. Looking 5 years ahead, what are the most promising industries being disrupted that our crowd wants to be part of? Wow, it's a great question, and I would tell you that one of let me think it, but I think, you know, I'm going to tell you two off the top of my head where we're seeing a lot of innovation in the last 3 years with products that will be, you know, mature and out in the market in the next 3 to 5 years. One is quantum computing, where we're seeing basically all the pieces that need to come together for quantum computing to become a reality. We're seeing them in the market. We're seeing entrepreneurs. We're seeing extremely strong teams working on all of these pieces, from quantum computers themselves to the operating system. You know, companies that want to, if the quantum computers would be like becoming the IBMs and the Dell computers of quantum computers, right? The operating system would be like becoming the Microsoft Windows, right, of quantum computing. Then there are all sorts of code generators for quantum that accelerate developers' work. There are networking solutions for quantum computers that have to do with tying them up together into clouds, so the quantum cloud. I think quantum computing is definitely one of those. The other one is probably food tech. Huge amount of innovation going on in all the space having to do with alternative proteins, from fish proteins to poultry and beef. You know, if it is through fermentation or you know, vegetarian alternatives, printing technologies. We recently invested in a company called Plantish that is basically printing salmon fillets. Okay, truly printing salmon fillets. I've tasted them. The texture is excellent. The taste is pretty good. Obviously, it's a product that is still not in the market. There's a lot of development going on in the space of alternative proteins, and I think that's going to be one other area. Of course, more traditional things that I think will surprise you less have to do with fintech. The whole banking world is being revolutionized. Transportation is going to continue to be revolutionized. We're seeing, for the last 5 years, we've been seeing the components that are now and in the next 5 to 10 years going into the cars and going to make cars a lot safer and a lot more convenient. So there's, I think those are probably my top sectors. Let's see. Wow, lots of questions. Thank you very much. So can you give us your evaluation about the Amazonian era, the gigification of work? Wow, I'm not sure I am the best person to answer that one. I'm going to skip it. Apologies. Next question is, what size market and startup valuation you looking for goal at exit? Listen, it really varies, right? When we invest, as I mentioned earlier, we invest in early stage, growth stage, and late stage. When we invest in early stage, we're looking at least at a 10x upside potential, right? I mean, there's the adjusted risk reward that we look at in every investment, right? The risk when you invest in early stage is very high, and therefore the reward needs to be very high as well. So when we invest in early stage, we're going to be looking for rewards of 10x or 20x. When we invest in growth stage, the risk is significantly lower, and so is the upside. So when we're investing in growth stage companies, we're going to look for upside in the 4 to 7x, 4 to 7 times capital. And when we look to late stage, the risk is even lower, and we look for returns in the 2 to 3, 2 to 4x. I hope that's helpful. One last question came in. What would be, whoa, the chat is moving. What would be the main investment for lower class in Brazil from our crowd's point of view? So what would be the main investment for the lower class? I'm not sure I understood the question. Maybe, Christina, you want to elaborate. What do you mean for the lower class? So I appreciate if you can elaborate on that. Next question, are there any plans for investments on products delivered from the Amazon biodiversity? That's a very interesting one. I think there's gotta be. I don't think I've seen many, but another good reason why we should probably be investing in Brazil, because that's probably a lot of what's going on in the local ecosystem. We haven't seen a lot of, we see a lot of products that have to do with alternative proteins and alternative energy. By the way, when asked about sectors, I don't know why I failed to mention alternative energy. We're seeing a huge amount of innovation in anything having to do with reductions of CO2 emissions. And that will obviously help us preserve the Amazonas and help with Amazonian biodiversity, but specific products derived from Amazonian biodiversity, we haven't seen just yet. Somebody there, Christina asked in Portuguese. That's going to be difficult for me to.
Yeah, Alan, I'll just jump in here. And her question actually goes a lot in line with what you were answering about which niches are more interesting to invest in. So I think you've already covered that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nicole. Excellent. So should we spend, kind of 5 minutes on each of these 3 companies that I lined up to share with you? Would that be of interest?
Sure, yeah, I guess. And if questions come up, you can stop and answer them as we go. And then we also have a few we prepared for the end.
Wonderful. Let's do that. So first company I want to share with you is called DID. Okay. Now there's, oops, sorry, can you hear me okay? Great. So,
I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, that was Siri. The one of the there are many interesting things about this company besides what it does, and I want to tell you before the journey that the entrepreneurs had here, because when we first invested in DID, it was an early stage company. Talk about risk, right? It was an early stage company in cybersecurity. Okay, what they did is they did encryption of images. Okay, they basically allowed people or companies actually to encrypt the photos of their customers. You know, we as a financial institution, we have picture IDs of every single one of our investors. Okay, banks have them. Any company has pictures of their employees, you know, for their tags and all of these things. Now, in today's world, if your picture is stolen, you start, you run the risk of your identity being stolen. And what they did was encrypting the pictures so that AI algorithms could not basically copy the identity because unless the picture was decrypted. Well, that was going quite well. They sold to a few financial institutions, and then they had an ask from a big company called MyHeritage. I don't know how many of you know MyHeritage. You do. Well, MyHeritage launched an offering based on DID's technology called Deep Nostalgia. Okay, and what Deep Nostalgia did is allowed people, you know, members of MyHeritage, to bring back to life the pictures of their ancestors. So your grandmother or your, you know, uncle that passed away, suddenly you had uploaded a picture into MyHeritage, suddenly he was blinking, you could type a text and he would be speaking. Amazing. And this went viral, and the company pivoted from a cybersecurity company encrypting pictures. Now they're working with TikTok, with MyHeritage. Let's have a look. It's super, super interesting. And I want to start by showing you a quick video from theirs.
Emotion.
Magic.
Technology.
Life.
Emotion.
Magic.
Technology.
Life. Stop.
You're going on a journey.
Continue.
Emotion.
Magic.
Technology.
Life.
Verily, I say, our 3D full body reenactment does approach with great haste.
I think you get the idea. Could you hear the sound?
Yes.
Excellent.
Them.
So this is a company that is basically taking still images and bringing them back, bringing them to life. And they're doing it with face pictures now, but they're moving into full body solutions. And ultimately, they're going to be a metaverse player creating, high quality avatars. Their revenue is growing dramatically. So they finished 2021 with $3.6 million in contracted revenue, and they have a very solid pipeline with growth from MyHeritage and Warner Brothers and many others to grow to over $12 million. So this is an Israeli company founded in 2017 that, as I mentioned to you, they did a pivot and moved from being a cybersecurity company to being a social media and in the future a metaverse add-on technology. They're raising right now $20 million at a pre-money valuation of 85. Very, very cool. They're working, amongst others with, Josh, which is the Indian TikTok, with Warner Brothers, with MyHeritage, and many others. I don't know if there are any questions on this. If not, I'll talk to you about some other interesting companies. So there's a question here. Do the companies invest in pharmaceutic products like Pythotherapics? Our startup has one for stroke and trauma. First of all, we do not invest in drugs, in drug companies, pharmaceuticals per se, but we do invest in medical technologies. So if this is a medtech company as opposed to a pharma company, we would be delighted to look at it. Let me tell you about Anodot. Very interesting company, basically allowing businesses to understand, using AI, some of the questions that we probably wouldn't even ask. That's the reality. In business, we're normally monitoring the things that we know we need to monitor, but then there are things happening there that if we knew about them, it would be incredibly valuable, both to address problems before they become too big or to assess opportunities. Let me show you a quick video.
Anodot is introducing a new approach to monitoring. Imagine you had a drop in referrals from 1 or 2 partners. With the hundreds of affiliates or partners in your network, how soon would you find it? Nowadays, it takes more than BI and dashboards to keep pace. Meanwhile, your business is losing money. With Anodot, you can start monitoring thousands of events in real time. It happens autonomously while you work. We alert you when it's time to act. The blue line is the actual data, the number of referrals from a single affiliate in a specific region. The blue sleeve is the metrics baseline, the expected range for each of your metrics. We run hundreds of machine learning models that can learn and anticipate each metric's behavior and create a baseline that's extremely precise, uncovering anomalies normally hidden within static thresholds. Our system also scores each incident, filtering out the noise, pushing the most critical alerts to your workflow so you can act quickly. Go autonomous and catch incidents faster. Anodot, autonomous business monitoring.
This is incredible. I mean, autonomous business monitoring is the way of the future. It wasn't possible because AI wasn't there. So, we had to define exactly what we wanted to monitor. But imagine that there's machine learning algorithms looking at data, understanding normal course of business, and then projecting what could happen or what is about to happen and highlighting that for the business is critical. And that's why, their customers include Fidelity and Overstock and Nordstrom and AT&T and T-Mobile, Playtika in the gaming space, incredible amount of marquee customers that are using Anodot for autonomous business monitoring.
Anodot is
So I'm happy to review the last company that I have here and answer any last questions that we may have. This company is called Taylor Brands, and it's one of my favorites. What they've done is basically enable people that are starting a business, making it really, really, really easy for people that are starting a new business. Okay, the way they started is by developing an AI engine, an artificial intelligence engine that will interview you, will ask you questions about the nature of your business, and based on your answers, will design a logo for your business for free. And the logo, they give it to you for free. Then that same AI business, that same AI engine can develop a website for you. And now you have a logo and a website. So you can order, printed materials like business cards or t-shirts or hats or bags for your business. You can, with a click, set up a company. You can, with a click, start social media campaigns, advertising, basically allowing you a full suite of services for managing a new business. Super, super cool and growing incredibly fast. They finished 2021 with $20 million in annual recurring revenue, and they're projecting for 2022 anywhere between $43 and $47 million in ARR. Really, really, really impressive. A very sticky product, and they are growing the annual revenue per user quite dramatically.
You need a
I'm
logo.
not going to show you the video. It's not that interesting. We are investing via a convertible loan here with it's a $25 million convertible loan that we are leading at a $450 million cap and a 15% discount to the next round. They support Portuguese, so you can try it out if you'd like. taylorbrands.com. They're in terms of their evolution, they started with brand setup, which is the logo, business setup, which is the domain name, mailbox, setting up an LLC that is a company, and then start to do the invoicing and scheduling and all the things that the business needs, and the revenue per customer continues to grow as they provide more and more services. And that's what I had to review with you today. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for the excellent and very engaging talk. I'm sure we'll get more questions, but I want to put mine in before we do. And sure. Going back to the very beginning of your talk, how do you think that your early years in Costa Rica and also your experience as a student in Israel shaped you to go on to become the successful entrepreneur you are today?
Thanks for the question, Nicole. So, I think I come from an entrepreneurial family myself. So, my dad was an entrepreneur, not in tech. Okay, he was, in flowers, in banking, in construction, in retail. So he tried many things. Some went well, some didn't. Understanding that failure is part of being an entrepreneur was very helpful for me, and I saw that through my father's experience. I think that moving from Costa Rica to Israel, and then from Israel to California, that ability or that necessity, I would say, to be able to cope with, different languages, different social environments, different cultures, and adapt I think that's a huge that's a huge piece of being an entrepreneur, right? Definitely in the global world that we live, it's both the ability to mold to customers and investors from around the world and employees from around the world. It's both the ability to deal with change and to accept that things aren't the way you always thought they were. So I think if I had to sum it up, I think those would be the top takeaways from my childhood and early career.
Perfect. Thank you, Alan. I have another question here. What are the main points that an investor should look for when investing in a technology startup?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I can give you my view, which I think is pretty consistent across all the investment partners at our crowd. First and foremost, you need the right team, right? You need the right team, you need the right people, you need people that can pivot. And I see that we have a question in the chat about the DID pivot. Startups must pivot. And, going back to my personal experience, the ability to land in different countries and, figure out where is the north and start running in the right direction, that's critical. So you look first and foremost for the right team. Then you look at the addressable market, okay? We like investing in companies that have addressable markets in the tens of billions of dollars, okay? Hundreds of millions it's not interesting enough, okay? We want companies that truly can be, can own categories that are gonna be, have the potential of tens of billions of dollars. Then we're gonna look at the barriers to entry, okay? Because there are lots of great ideas, but if there aren't solid barriers to entry, then it's not worth taking the risk of investing the money. I would say to the entrepreneurs, it's not worth taking the risk of investing your time, right? You must be able to build solid barriers to entry, preventing people that have deeper pockets or that are in a related industry to just say, wow, great idea, I'm going to do it myself, okay? And that happens often. You as an entrepreneur, you're going to start talking to the big guys that are potentially the ones that are going to acquire you. But if there aren't any meaningful barriers to entry, they will just copy you. They don't need to buy you. So if I had to summarize, I would say, again, first and foremost, the team. Second, the size of the addressable market. And third, the barriers to entry. We like, on this last, with the term that I often use is invest in companies that have an unfair competitive advantage. Okay, they have something that kind of turns the table around. Okay, it's unfair. That they if you want to compete with them, you really don't have a good chance of doing it.
Ellen, other than these characteristics that you just mentioned, do you have any other tips for entrepreneurs that are trying to catch the attention of venture capitalists?
So I think those are three things. I think you need to be incredibly focused, and you need to be your pitch needs to be incredibly crisp, right? It's very important to be able to convey your idea, why the problem you're solving is huge, right? Why you are the right team, and why you have something, or you're building something that will be incredibly difficult to replicate. You need to be able to articulate that very, very clearly. I think, one of the things that I kept, people kept saying to me when I was young is that they said, don't lose your excitement, don't lose the, I think you need to, when you communicate ideas to people, you need to do so with a fair amount of energy and excitement. If you don't get excited about your ideas, nobody will. So I think those would be the main tips. Apologies.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Alan. I think we had a great conversation, a lot of comments here. Thanking you for all the information. Itzhak, Nicole, are we good? Is there any questions we still have?
No, I think we also just have to thank Alan. Thank you. It was really excellent. And thank you everyone that joined. I'm sure we all learned a lot, and hopefully some of us will be able to use these lessons and actually come into our crowd's portfolio. Who knows?
Wonderful. We'll be delighted. It's been a pleasure being with you. Thank you all for your time, and thank you, Nicole and Brenda and Tzachi. By the way, I'm going to be in São Paulo the first week in March. So I think something is being coordinated with Tzachi. Yeah, it will be great to be local. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Bye, Alan.
Thank you very much, Alan.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.